Hello, hello.
Dan Rubenstein.
I got to clear up some space before we go official time. I got to clear up some space, and then we can go official. We'll delete this one.
While you do that, this is where I welcome everybody to the stream. It is midnight
Nice.
Eastern time. Week 13 is in the books. Week 13 was really weird, wasn't it?
It was a good one, though.
It was really weird. It was a good one. We had near chaos in many cases, and we're going to hit record here on the actual podcast in a few moments. So before we get there, if you are joining the stream, please hit subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
If you are joining the stream, please go to solidverbal.com/listen. If you want to follow our podcast, that is, of course, much appreciated. If you already follow the podcast, please go on out to Apple, if you can, and leave a rating or a review. That stuff all helps other people join the Verballerhood. It has been a banner season for the Verbal. We hope to continue our growth.
I agree. I don't have nothing to add other than I inhaled a bunch of fireplace smoke yesterday, and that's why I sound like death. I hope I'm not dying.
You could be. This could be your last show.
I'm sure there are, select fans of various fan bases that say, well, who could Ty replace Dan with? That could add some more dynamic personality and would like a 12-team playoff more than Dan. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get into it. I have speed all around. Let's hope this records. We can always pull it down from YouTube after the fact, so I'm good.
Let's count it down, boys and girls, the millions watching at home. Let's go. 3, 2. College football week 13. Dan Rubenstein almost officially in the books as we record this live, midnight Eastern, on this here November the 26th, 2023. We finally had a weird week. We didn't have the chaos.
Yeah.
But we had a weird week, did we not?
We did. Ty, officially, you have thrown your name into the Texas A&M sweepstakes to be their new coach. I like all the coaches getting in real quick. It's Mark Stoops, allegedly, reportedly, whatever. Strange week, strange weather week, strange starting quarterback at this place or at that place, strange results. Even if there weren't enormous upsets, the path we got to some of the results was wild and fun to talk about and will be fun to talk about. So, yes, Ty, totally with you. Rivalry week. College football, setting up what should be a pretty huge conference championship weekend next weekend. I'm in, Ty.
I'm in. Look, we're in it to win it. We've been all year. We appreciate everybody stopping on by to download the show. Solidverbal.com/listen is the easiest way to get all the subscribe buttons that you need. But, of course, if you find us on Apple or on Spotify or any of your podcasting apps of choice, please make sure you hit subscribe or follow. We'd love to be with you throughout the course of the next however many weeks. We do this all year long, not the least of which is, of course, Conference Championship Week, which we'll talk about maybe towards the end of this episode. On this episode, we've got our big headliners, our fire starters, if you will, that we need to talk through, some of the games that I think are going to drive conversation as we go into the new week. We're also going to go through the things that gave us the warm fuzzies, the Saturday scaries, the roasts, your reverbs, all sorts of interesting things here on the Solid Verbal for College Football Week 13. Did you like it last week when I did the speed recap, Dan?
I kind of loved it, Ty.
Michigan 30, Ohio State 24, America's team with another win. Yeah. This one over the Buckeyes, despite another week off for Jim Harbaugh. Next week, get this, a 23-point favorite against Iowa for the Big Ten title. Over-under is 35 points. 3-5. We'll talk about that in due course. Every winning team in the Big Ten scored at least 28 points this week. Maybe some kind of record, I don't know. Almost every team, Iowa only scored 13. That's what they do. They're the real heroes in this story. Purdue gets the bucket, Wisconsin gets the axe, Northwestern and wins in a shootout. Maryland, an elite winner this week. Penn State blanked Michigan State. Michigan State hired Jonathan Smith, though, so maybe a little bit of progress on their front, right? Why not? We had Jalen Milroe with a mill rope. 4th and goal from the 31-yard line. Touchdown, Isaiah Bond, back corner of the end zone. Stuns Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Georgia got a fight from Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
LSU with 21 fourth quarter points to beat A&M by 12. Sounds like Mark Stoops is going to be the next coach at A&M. We'll see if they make that official.
Yep.
Perhaps his last game in Kentucky. If so, knocked off number 10 Louisville in the Governor's Cup. And Mississippi State gets Jeff Lebby, does not get the golden egg. Ole Miss wins that game 17-7. Meanwhile, Arkansas laid an egg. They lost by 34 at home to Mizzou. Tennessee finishes 8-4 with a big win over Vanderbilt. Meanwhile, in the frozen tundra of Bill Snyder Family Stadium, more like Snowmageddon than Farmageddon, we had Iowa State winning 42-35. Bit of a shootout there. Oklahoma State needed just one win to get to the Big 12 title game. They needed to do it over BYU. They had to make it interesting, double overtime. They get the job done. They're going to play Texas. Texas won by 50 over the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. Oklahoma with 69 points in a win over TCU. Very nice. UCF going bowling for the 8th straight year. West Virginia and Kansas both get to 8 wins. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going in the ACC. Trey Benson with a tray of his own, 3 touchdowns, a gutty win in the swamp to keep Florida State unbeaten. 55 points and 500 yards for Virginia Tech. Why not? Why not? Hokies win the Commonwealth Cup. A rock fight in the Palmetto Bowl. 16-7 Clemson wins over South Carolina. Miami big over Boston College. Duke hands Pitt their 9th loss of the season. Ouch. That hurts. Syracuse Bowl eligible despite firing Dino Babers. North Carolina's defense is so back, baby.
Yeah.
Lose in the unnamed rivalry to NC State. Got a big rematch coming next week, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about here. Oregon pounded Oregon State to get to the Pac-12 title. Washington scored 24 and escaped Wazoo with a 42-yarder at the gun. One of these days they're going to lose. Today was not that day. Maybe next week. Again, we'll talk. What else we had in the Pac-12? Luke Batari, Ryan Staub. Utah 23, Colorado 17. Arizona was out for blood. They win the Territorial Cup. Notre Dame obliterates Stanford with 381 on the ground. We've got UCLA playing Cal as we speak. And to close things out, Liberty finishes 12-0. The 3 T's of Tulane, Toledo, and Troy go 11-1. New Mexico State and Miami, Ohio with 10 wins. Ohio 9-3. App State 8-4. Boise State 7-5 with a win over Air Force and maybe a shot at the Mountain West if the computers like them. And last but certainly not least, as we dim the music down, Dan, James Madison 11-1. Jacksonville State 8-4. South Carolina's loss means that no matter what the NCAA says, and no matter whatever the Virginia district attorney or state, whatever you call the attorney general, that's what it is.
Yeah.
In the great state of Virginia, whatever goes, whichever direction in that court case, forgive me, it's late. James Madison, Jacksonville State are officially going bowling because South Carolina lost. Because South Carolina lost.
I don't know why I played that. It's just fun. Shout out Sibelius. Everybody's shouting him out these days, right?
Absolutely. So there you go. That is your quick recap. I'm sure there was some stuff that we glossed over. We'll try to get through all that and much, much more. But your 4-minute recap. Visit forballers.com, of course, to join our community. Dan, we should probably start with the fire starter, the big fire starter.
Fire! All right, baby.
Look, it was Michigan 30, Ohio State 24.
Yeah, I agree.
That was the game. We did a live stream. We had a bunch of people tuning in. It kind of came down to the final drive. It was a good game. It was a better game than we'd seen, I think, in the previous 2 meetings between these 2 teams.
It was an excellent game. I'm positive Ohio State fans feel as if Ryan Day still has not learned in terms of finding the time to be aggressive, whether it's on 4th and short at midfield, whether it's relying on a run game that wasn't doing too much, especially laterally over the course of this game, whether it was Kyle McCord taking some time once again, a few drives to get loose, and you can't blame him in that environment to get loose against a very, very strong Michigan defense, a very strong Michigan set of corners in Will Johnson and Mike Sandra still. But the story to me is how complete a game Michigan played. how much more trust it seemed like there was in J.J. McCarthy, especially, and we talked about this on the stream. I had a terrific time with you, all the listeners, all the viewers watching it, how Michigan on first down started trusting J.J. McCarthy. They weren't predictable. They weren't going run pass. They were looking to play action. They had some dropbacks. They were getting creative with their first down play calling because that means there is faith on second and third to move and stay ahead of the chains. So I thought that was a big major turning point for Michigan, that they gave Ohio State and Jim Knowles a lot more to think about as this game progressed. And it came to pass, whether it was Colson Loveland, whether it was Roman Wilson on the still kind of sort of maybe dicey touchdown. I mean, it was an amazing throw, but the bobbling, it was ruled a touchdown. There was not evidence to overrule it. I think they got that right, but what a weird wobbly play it was that ended in 6 for Michigan. Defense comes up big with the interception at the end. This is a team that seems to be built for the big moments in a way that Ohio State just isn't. And I've been somewhat down on Kyle McCord, just that I don't think he is up to the bar of recent Ohio State quarterback play. He made throws that brought him to that bar.
Well, let me stop you right there. Let me pause you, because we asked a question on our live stream that I think really highlights the dilemma of this game.
Sure.
Your question during the stream was whether or not Kyle McCord has played his last game as starting quarterback for Ohio State.
Right.
Not whether he's going to transfer or go pro or anything like that, but whether they're going to get somebody else next year who's better.
Right. They're going to go to the portal and get an enormous name. Yeah.
Sure. He got off to a slow start in this game, but then he really settled in. He grew into the game. He found a rhythm, threw an interception on the final drive that sealed the deal for Michigan, but genuinely, throughout the course of the game, as he got more comfortable, made some really good throws. And he showed good pocket presence. We were singing his praises at moments during this game.
For sure.
The reason I say dilemma is because I feel like pinning this all one way or another on Kyle McCord does not give enough credit to the Michigan defense.
I agree. I think that's fair.
Because the Michigan defense was, again, outstanding. It's been outstanding all year. Ohio State had 107 yards rushing. They were able to make this game about Kyle McCord. And I think because of that, he had 2 picks. But I think ultimately it is more a story for me of the Michigan defense, again, dictating the pace of play, limiting what Ohio State could do on the ground, forcing him into situations where, look, he had a lot of success throwing the ball for a good chunk of the game, but in high leverage moments, namely that final drive, they bring the pressure, they upset his timing, he floats one over the middle, that's the ball game. So
it's also, by the way, just to piggyback what you're saying, I think it shines a spotlight on how far Ohio State's offensive line development has fallen, because a lot of the success that recent guys have had, be it JT Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, CJ Stroud, any of these guys, they've played behind NFL offensive lines, and especially at tackle, they've been undisciplined. We saw the rush up the middle at times get to Kyle McCord on that last play. I think it was a Michigan outside linebacker who twisted in. I forget the name. It might have been Terrell. And it's a difference maker. It's a difference maker for Ohio State. It's noticeable in their struggles on the ground. It's noticeable on the struggles that Kyle McCord has had in navigating and stepping up into the pocket. And so Michigan is a team built to take advantage of a suspect offensive line, and they very much did, just like they have these past couple of years. You know, highlighted a couple years ago with Aiden Hutchinson, absolutely, but that was a better offensive line that year for Ohio State. Aiden Hutchinson's an all-pro. So that, to me, is a noticeable area of concern moving forward for Ohio State. But the story here, once again, is Michigan finding and adapting over the course of the game. Blake Corum didn't dominate this game. Donovan Edwards didn't dominate this game. Obviously, Michigan getting beat up with the injury to Zach Zinter, I think the starting right guard, who's been around for a while, sort of the heartbeat of that offensive line. It affected what Michigan felt comfortable doing somewhat, but not really on offense. And so we again, I'm going to echo the thing I've said 1,000 times this year. I think winning is a skill that Michigan possesses. It wasn't pretty these last couple of weeks against Penn State and Maryland. It became pretty and prettier over the course of this game against Ohio State. A really impressive performance from the Maize and Blue. And you just got the sense that it was going to take a superhuman 3 to 7 catches from Marvin Harrison Jr. to win this game. Anything short of that, Michigan wins. Michigan won.
And they didn't get him involved until later in the game.
Correct.
It took a while. Maybe because Will Johnson was out in the second half. I don't know. But I think you're right. This is very much a game won on the margins. It was not like one side dominated the other. And as you alluded at the very top of this little segment here.
Yeah.
That was evident, if only through the video replay reviews. All of them were very, very razor-thin margins.
Yeah.
Could have gone either way. I thought the officials did a good job, but a lot of those moments where they cut to Dean Blandino, and Dino doesn't want to give an opinion because he doesn't want to be wrong.
Right.
And he, instead of giving you an opinion on the call, he just kind of tells you the rules so you can make up your own judgment.
Yeah.
One of those. But I agree. An impressive win for Michigan, a less conservative game plan, I thought, all told, by Sharon Moore.
Agree.
Seemed like he was a little bit more in charge of the pace of play with some of his calls going forward on fourth down in a way that Ryan Day was not. You're going to hear a lot about...
I said it as it happened. That first half, 4th and 1 from, I think, their own 46.
It was the second drive of the game. It was 4th and 1 from their own 46. He elected to punt in a scoreless game.
Yep.
And they asked him about it after the game. He said,
great defense.
Great defense.
It's not like he's covering for something and playing field position because he's worried about his defense giving up 80. Great defense.
They asked him about it after the game. He said he didn't want to surrender momentum. Okay, that's one approach. That's sort of the Clad approach. If you've watched and listened to Joel Clad at all so far this season.
Yeah, the Platypus Cup, the team that decides to punt the most in going for it situation. Momentum is fake, and it's insane.
There were other instances in this game where Ryan Day sort of elected for the more conservative approach. Meanwhile, it seems like truly Sharon Moore was riding on the Underthink Express.
Agree.
And he went for it in moments where it seemed like it worked. He had a good team, obviously, that was able to deliver. And Michigan goes on to the Big Ten Championship. I said in the recap at the top, they're going to square off against Iowa. At time of recording, they're about a 23-point favorite. The over-under is only 35 points. We can talk about that one when we do our Wednesday preview of championship week. But a gutty win in a big spot at home, given all these circumstances for Michigan. And I thought they rose to the moment. So good on them.
I don't think Michigan's good enough to win a playoff game. Unless they play Florida State or something. I still have a lot of questions.
Let's talk about that in the roast.
We'll do that. Okay, continue.
Let's roast Michigan a little bit.
Please.
Just to keep this show fair and balanced.
Okay.
Let's go over to the Iron Bowl, okay?
Yes.
27-24 was the actual final. So the last 40 seconds of this game were absolute madness. Absolute madness. When I said at the top that we finally had some weirdness, we finally had some weirdness. This game was nuts. Auburn forced Alabama to a 4th and goal from the 31-yard line. If they stop Bama, it's over. They win the Iron Bowl at home, a huge upset, 24-20. Jalen Milroe snaps the ball. He has all day because it's a 2-man rush. They drop one guy to spy him in case he decides to run.
Yeah.
He throws an absolute dart to the back corner of the end zone. Isaiah Bond hauls it in. He's got almost inconceivable man coverage. He's open, jumps up,
gets it. A good corner, by the way. Transferred from Oregon. He's from the South. DJ James, a very good corner.
Just a ridiculous throw and catch here. Almost an even more ridiculous lapse in defense. I don't know how that happens, but Alabama scores a touchdown. Then Bama gives the ball back to Auburn. They kick it off. About 30 seconds left. Peyton Thorne gets sacked. He loses the ball. Almost goes for a safety. Does not. They barely get the next snap off before time expires. He throws what looks like a pick six to Terrion Arnold, though they waved off that touchdown. They said he was out at the 3-yard line. Your final was 27-24 in the Iron Bowl. This game was crazy, Dan.
By the way,
crazy. It tells us a lot. I think about how we should feel about Alabama going into this Georgia matchup. It says a lot about rivalry week and why we always say to throw the records out. This game, to me, embodied what this week is supposed to be.
I totally agree. And you sort of skip. You didn't skip because that was obviously the biggest moment, but how we even got to that moment with Jalen Milroe coming up just short near the goal line to set up 4th and short. They get the 4th down conversion. I think it was Roydell Williams tossed to the right. And then a bad snap, and then Jalen Milroe throws it past the line of scrimmage, backing them up to the 31, 4th and goal from the 31. Yeah, Auburn rushing kind of 2. I know there was a third guy in there, but he was sort of a spy. He wasn't rushing the passer. So that was a decision, and that was a decision. Auburn was not rushing a ton of guys, electing to, keep a spy around, which, by the way, doesn't work with Jalen Milroe. There's always an angle until there isn't with Jalen. That's how it works. He's just incredible. And the exact moment you think that he's only a runner, he finds Jermaine Burton streaking down the sideline or just makes a ridiculous throw. I cannot believe Nick Saban mentioned that they practice that kind of play.
He said it. Yeah. But he did qualify it.
He said, like, believe it or not, or something like that.
He said, believe it or not, we practice that type of thing. But then he qualified it. This is in the post game when he was talking to Jenny Dell. He says it's still kind of just like throwing it up, right? It's still
totally.
Like he acknowledges, like, you practice it, you have to know where your bearings are.
But
you have to know where
it
your
is
boundaries
smart.
Are, but
the way that it played out, they did isolate Isaiah Bond on one side of the field for a one-on-one play, and whether that's Auburn's fault and coming up short, that's an easy discussion to have. But I think you got to send more than two. Just call me old-fashioned, but with the game on the line, you need to force somebody to make a quicker decision than what Jalen Milroe was forced into.
Well, yeah.
Can I tell you the good news about Auburn? I thought it was a super smart and savvy game plan, the way that they ran Jarquez Hunter, the way that they ran Peyton Thorne. A lot of what we saw that worked against Georgia, I thought a lot of the defense was really smart, and they played hard. They got big stops. They forced Alabama to be uncomfortable a lot more than, of course, the Tide wanted to be. You get the muffed punt there at the end, which affects things. Like, Auburn is, not good enough to avoid those mistakes yet. Auburn's going to finish their season losing to New Mexico State and absolutely giving away an Iron Bowl at home. It hurts. It's going to hurt for 300-plus days moving forward. But if there's any positive to it, and this is not a moral victory thing, like, the plan was sound, right?
It felt, yeah. I mean, I jotted down here.
The execution was 93% sound. Yeah.
I jotted down that there were moments in this game where it felt like Hugh Freeze outcoached Nick Saban.
Sure.
And if you're an Auburn fan, like, you'll take that. You'll take that because this is always going to be a transition year. And assuming he can infuse that program with a little more talent and they can be a little bit more balanced. Look, they threw for 93 yards in this game.
Yeah.
They ran for 244 when everyone knew it was coming. So on some level, that's pretty good coaching and that's pretty good execution, at least on one side of the ball. This is an ongoing project for Auburn. And whatever your thoughts on Hugh Freeze, put him aside. He did a good job coaching football in this game because this is a very good Alabama defense. And coming out of it, this game had me questioning how they're going to look against Georgia. The line for Georgia in that game next week, at least at time of recording, all this is going to change. 4.5 in favor of the Dogs. I feel like Georgia is a much more finished product. Now, Georgia struggled a little bit with Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech moved the ball better than almost anybody in this game that they played tonight in the clean old-fashioned hate rivalry, which we'll talk about here momentarily. But I came away very impressed by Auburn. I came away very impressed with Jalen Milroe. He's gone a long way since being a liability the first couple weeks, now to basically being the centerpiece the last couple games for Alabama.
Yep.
But ultimately, you survive and advance a rivalry week, especially on the road, and Alabama got the job done. So I give them a lot of credit for winning in the manner that they did, however random it might have felt given the way that thing shook out down the stretch.
Man, Ron Roberts in the Auburn defense. Stupendous hairline, so there's that.
Yeah,
Auburn's defensive coordinator, but oof.
All right, another survive and advance situation, the Apple Cup, Dan.
Yes.
Washington wins 24-21 on a 42-yard field goal at the gun. I feel like I wasn't smart enough to understand the ending of this game.
A walk-on kicker, I believe, as well, who got a scholarship in the locker room right after.
I feel like I was not smart enough to understand what was happening down the stretch. And then when you understand a little bit more about the context and the kicker and maybe some of the uncertainty, Washington was insisting on throwing the ball late in this game. They were clearly within what would be normal field goal range for most kickers with like 20 seconds left. Within the span of the last minute, Michael Penix could have thrown 2, maybe 3 interceptions.
Yes.
If Wazoo could have held on to a couple more balls in this game, they probably win, whether on offense or defense or whatever. But Washington gets the bounces in that sense. Washington puts themselves in a situation to kick that 42-yarder at the gun, and they end up getting the W. They were always going to be playing in Vegas, and they were always going to be playing against Oregon by virtue of the Ducks' resounding win on Friday night. But this is a game a lot of us had circled because there was clearly some baggage here with the Washington-Wazoo matchup, given that Washington is leaving the conference and Wazoo feels a bit left for dead. There was also a really high point spread, which just did not make sense to you and I, given where Washington has been as a team over the last 8 weeks or so. They've played a lot of close games, Dan. They've gotten the job done. They've won those moments. They've got good players.
Yes.
But it has been way too close for comfort. They have not given that separation, and that's part of why we both like Wazoo. Wazoo came close, but Wazoo did not get the job done.
No, I forget what the spread was heading in. It was 16 17
and a half.
points. That's just not how Washington was winning games, especially since that Oregon game. And we talk about the season being a living, breathing thing. Washington, to start the year, the first half of the season, absolutely lethal, slicing and dicing teams like Boise State, Michigan State, some Pac-12 teams, really looking crazy impressive. And they just haven't looked the same since. Now, they're like my Bear Grylls team of the week because their survival skills are nobody drinks their own pee as quickly and thirstily as the Washington Huskies, right? They do whatever it takes to survive. Pee is sterile, by the way. You can fact check that. Is that true, Ty?
It is. I've watched plenty of Bear Grylls. I'm well aware.
It sounds like I'm putting Washington down. I'm absolutely not. Winning is a skill. Washington is very good at taking advantage of bounces, at figuring out where the opportunities lie. If it's beating USC in a shootout in LA, that all counts. It's a crazy impressive year. Nobody has ever, I think, gone undefeated in the Pac-12 era. They just did. It seemed to take an emotional toll on Michael Penix near the end of the game. He made some great throws to Rome Odunze. Otherwise, he seemed off. The running game seemed off. The defense has kind of looked like what the defense has been this year. Opportunistic when, they get a hand in the air and swatting a pass and it popping up, which they got that key interception. Had an amazing call in a high leverage moment. I think it was a 4th and short where they called the reverse to Rome Odunze, and a touchdown saving tackle from a corner who made his way around the field for Wazoo, a crazy heads up play. But for whatever reason, Washington is not finding the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th level, right? That they're not figuring out how to set things up over the course of the season, where the back shoulder throws to Rome Odunze and, getting big plays or finding broken plays to, whoever it is, Jalen McMillan finally healthy, Jalen Polk. These guys are great receivers, but the offense hasn't really evolved over the course of the season, and teams have caught up, and they're very good. They're very, very good. What they just completed was something that's crazy impressive, but I don't feel like they've grown over the course of the year. And whether it's against Oregon, whether it's in a playoff game, I think this is sort of an LRO moment where you can only get outgained and find those 4th quarter moments long enough, and then you suit up against whatever Oregon is now, whatever Georgia is, whatever Texas is, whatever Michigan is, and it doesn't work like it works against Wazoo or Cal or Arizona State.
Here's the interesting factoid.
Yeah.
Time of recording. I'm going to do this for all of the upcoming championship games just because I think it adds context. Oregon favored by 9. Oregon favored by 9 over Washington. My hunch is that number comes down. My hunch is that number arrives somewhere around 7 or 7.5. I've been wrong all year. I wasn't wrong this week. I did pretty well with my picks, but it seems to me like people are going to see that line and think that's a lot. For two teams that can score, the over-under is about 67, 68 points. I feel like I'm going to come down on the side of Oregon. Just given the way that Oregon has played over the last however many weeks now, it seems like that game that they played against Washington way back when now, that one got away from them in the final minute. They made a decision that did not pay off. A little too much riverboat gambler for Dan Lanning.
Yep.
And if they punt it, it's a much different story. And Oregon maybe is here undefeated.
Sure.
But that being said, Washington continues to win these moments. And so that is a skill as well. Much the way we'll make this analogy again, much the way it was for TCU a year ago when we all had doubts about their defense or their team or, can they keep doing this? Washington, again, keeps doing it. They've played a lot of close games. They're nothing if not battle-tested. And they're going to have a big rematch next week, Friday night in Vegas. So we'll talk more about that on our Wednesday preview show. Anything more to add on the Apple Cup?
No, I mean, look, if you're playing close games against Washington State, if you're playing close games against USC and Arizona State and Stanford, it's good to win those close games. It doesn't speak volumes about where your program stacks up on the national stage at this moment.
Let's go over to the Florida State-Florida game.
Okay.
So-called Florida Cup. So a lot of attention was on Tate Rodemaker getting the start for Florida State after the
who you were immediately out on upon his entrance into the stadium.
I thought he looked like a dorky gamer.
Yeah. Two things can be true. You can win this game and look like a dorky gamer. Yep.
He looked like a dorky gamer when they showed the shot of him walking into the stadium. He just did.
Yep.
He did. I look like a dorky gamer. I'm a podcaster. So that's not necessarily as a slight, but did not necessarily carry himself as the starting quarterback for Florida State. We mentioned it briefly on the preview.
Yeah.
Talked about a lot about Tate Rodemaker. Did not talk enough perhaps about Graham Mertz also being out. So Graham Mertz broke his collarbone. He was out. That meant Max Brown, the freshman, getting the start for Florida. I thought over the course of this one, it felt fairly even. It felt like a fairly even matchup. Given how bad the Florida defense has been, the fact that they went into the fourth quarter.
Just like a gang wailing on each other with fungo bats.
I mean, kind of, yeah. I mean, the fact that they went into the fourth quarter and had only given up 14 points, that felt like a huge dub to me, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that being said, Florida had itself in a good position, I felt, to win this football game. And Florida continued doing what it has done all season. And that is it continued shooting itself in the foot.
Whacking itself with the fungo bat in the foot.
Whacking itself in the head with the fungo bat.
Yeah.
It has been this way all season. They were 93rd in the nation coming into this game with 6.5 penalties per game. In this one, they had a guy get booted for spitting on another player.
Yeah.
They also had a key targeting call.
Double targeting.
Like
two guys.
Crazy targeting call.
Yeah.
Tate Rodemaker scrambling. Two guys go down. He gets bonked in the head. He came back in. It looks like he's okay.
I hope so. Yeah.
That gives Florida State a first down. It gives them another opportunity, another bite at the apple. Trey Benson runs it in for his third touchdown. Absolutely maddening. I am not suggesting Billy Napier should be fired. I'm just going to say that these are the types of things that have people consider, again, whether or not Billy Napier should be fired. Because
their own backup quarterback, right? This is not a Graham Mertz game.
Just a lot of dumb... Listen, Dan.
Yeah, I'm listening.
A lot of dumb stuff on defense. And this was a team that had countless questions about their defense coming into the season. It was the big question. Outside of Graham Mertz, which was probably the headliner, and oh my gosh, I can't believe they got Graham Mertz. Outside of that, the big question was their defense, because their defense last year stunk.
Yep.
Their defense this year has also stunk, and they have continued shooting themselves in the foot. That is coaching.
And hired a new, young, exciting coach away from Alabama after he's there for like a month or something like that.
That is coaching.
Yeah.
That is coaching. And so I like Billy Napier. I still stand by the fact that I think it was a good hire. I want them to give him more time. But this is coaching. And in a game like this, where they had Florida State on the ropes, and it was an ideal situation playing at home, at night, against the backup quarter, all of these things were in their favor, and they still lost 24-15.
Neither one of these teams should ever have a bad defense.
No.
And there's talent on this defense. We saw the guys make plays up front. We saw speed on this defense, sometimes utilized super wisely, sometimes less than. It's a broken defense at the moment, and I don't know if it's a culture thing. I don't know if it's the right guys for this kind of defense, a fit thing, whatever it is. It didn't seem like the effort and discipline were there in an extraordinarily winnable moment at home against a backup quarterback in a rivalry game. You don't need to score a ton of points to win that game. Offensively, you understand why they're going to be limited with Max Brown, but even still, they were able to generate some bigger plays on the ground. You don't need to do a ton. The problem is Florida State's defense is excellent. It's fully excellent. So that's still going to be a tall task, but the way this defense performed against the Florida State offense was with opportunities to capitalize and win. I'm obviously preaching to a Florida fan base that knows this already. Crazy disappointing.
It's very disappointing. So further context, again, Florida State next week -5.5 against Louisville, ACC championship.
Whoa. Yep.
It's a very, very interesting line to me. Very interesting line to me.
Yeah.
Because Louisville, well, we'll talk about the Governor's Cup here shortly, but Louisville, I think, can push Florida State in ways that Florida couldn't. If only because Jack Plummer has gotten better throughout the course of the year. They've done more with him. The offense is definitely more varied. I don't know if they've played anyone as good as Florida State, and that's probably a separate topic altogether. But all that being said, that game to me now looks very interesting as compared to a couple weeks ago when I thought it was Jordan Travis who was going to be the signal
who was
caller.
In the stadium, by the way. It was good to see him.
In the stadium, yeah. Man, it's such a bummer.
High spirits.
It's a huge bummer
that
he is not playing. But Tate Rodemaker came in, didn't commit any huge mistakes. We'll see what they do with them in some of these high leverage spots. I kind of stand by what I said a week ago. This Florida State team that we saw today, probably not good enough to win a playoff game. But if they win against Louisville, you got to put them in. You got to put them in.
It depends how they beat Louisville. I still think that the manner matters. I think magnitude, manner, whatever. I still think it matters. If they're beating Louisville in 4 overtimes, 10-7, I don't know. And you see the rest. I'm willing to accept context and not just a win in your end moment if they look kind of trash against Louisville in a winning effort.
So, look, we're going to get to our favorite things, our warm fuzzies, as we call them here on the recap show.
Yes.
If you've made it this far, though, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Again, going out to Apple, Spotify, whatever your podcasting app of choice. Hit subscribe, hit follow, leave us a rating or review. All that stuff really helps. Should we get to favorite things from the week?
Let's do it.
Warm fuzzies, Dan. This is a campfire, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder who feels especially warm and happy because breaking news, I don't know if you have the sound. We mentioned Mark Stoops. As far as we can tell now, Pete Thamel reporting Mark Stoops not going to Texas A&M.
Okay.
And he's going to stay at Kentucky. So, look, this is not a live show unless people are watching it live, but this is a podcast primarily. So, we'll see if we all know by the time you listen, but we don't know in this moment.
A&M supposedly wanted to get a coach in place by the end of the weekend. We'll see if that happens.
Okay.
We'll see if that happens. Dan, give me a warm fuzzy or two, will you?
I will absolutely give you a warm fuzzy because we talked about Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. Oregon laid waste to Oregon State.
Yeah.
And it was ugly almost from the jump because Oregon's defensive line, specifically Brandon Dorless, who's all conference, if not all American caliber, completely overwhelmed anybody that they threw at him. And DJU was overwhelmed. His own little brother got in on a sack of him by pushing a left tackle into him. Oregon's the warm fuzzy with Oregon is the defensive line, and Bo Nix was just an absolute stud playmaker. Whatever your opinion of the Heisman, he's absolutely Heisman worthy of Heisman caliber.
It's got to be him or Jayden Daniels.
I think it's a 2-man field. Whatever your preference is, it's not wrong. So, Bo Nix was great. They actually didn't run the ball all that well. The play calling was very good for Oregon as the game developed, and I think it was just the defense that Oregon brought to this game against a good, if not very good, Oregon State offense. They've run the ball these past couple of years super well. Oregon did not. Even with down a starting quarter, Oregon did not flinch at all, and this game wasn't even as close as the final score. What was it, 31-7?
31-7.
It was almost never in doubt. Even when it was like 14-7, 14-0, whatever, it just did not feel like Oregon State belonged on the same field.
You and I were messaging back and forth. It did feel like Oregon State was out of juice.
Yeah.
It felt like it was the end of the road, a long season. And I'm not even saying that as a knock. I mean, it's a long season for these guys. It's a long season for us covering it. I can only imagine what it's like playing. And they seemed like they were out of juice.
Yeah. And look, after the game against Washington, and now with the obviously then surrounding rumors involving Jonathan Smith and his move to Michigan State, which is now confirmed and official, and their situation where like, oh, this is their last Pac-12 power conference game that they will play forever, for the foreseeable future, whatever. There's a lot of sadness, I would say, around, or potential sadness at that time around Oregon State. I feel bad. I like watching my team play in the same conference as Oregon State, and it's a fun rivalry. And so there's only so much you can do, and certainly that had to contribute to it. I just also happen to think two things being true at once. Oregon's way better than Oregon State.
Can I tell you what gave me the warm fuzzies as
Please.
we sit here around the campfire?
Yes.
Can I talk for a minute? Can we all take a knee and talk about the crazy, stupid Big Ten West?
Would love to.
What is not to love about this side of the conference? What is not to love about it?
Okay, Minnesota throwing the ball forward. Iowa throwing the ball forward.
Iowa
How
won
much time do you have? Yeah.
13-10.
Yeah.
They won 13-10. They hit the under on the lowest total ever in a college football game. The total was 24.5 points. They won in the most improbable way possible. They threw a pick, and then they re-intercepted Nebraska on the ensuing drive. The guy runs it to within field goal range, a 38-yard game winner by a backup kicker.
Yeah.
Iowa is 10-2. They have scored 216 points. I don't know where that puts them historically. It is not in the top. I can tell you that much. Meanwhile, we had Northwestern and Illinois randomly in a shootout.
Did you see it's the third best Iowa offense of all time? No, I'm just kidding. Continue.
45-43, Northwestern and Illinois randomly get into a shootout. 88 points. I haven't done the state school math on what percentage of Iowa's total that is, but 88 points, the Cats scoring 45 to get win number 7. I have to believe that's going to clinch Big Ten Coach of the Year for David Braun.
You would think so. And Northwestern, what? A field goal, an Iowa field goal away from appearing in Indianapolis as the Big Ten West, the final Big Ten West representative in the Big Ten championship game. Yeah, as long as you're getting the ball to a guy named Cam, Northwestern's in great shape on offense.
The Purdue-Indiana game for the Old Oaken Bucket was back and forth and a ton of fun. A good game for our friend Heisman card.
Yes, of course.
360 in total yardage, 4 touchdowns. And shout out Wisconsin. Shout out Wisconsin. You know, I was confident about that game. And you were like, why are you so confident about Wisconsin? And I said, Dan, let me tell you why. Minnesota stinks.
I mean, I also took Wisconsin. I just didn't appreciate all of the warmth that you were putting into the universe. Continue.
Also fair. Minnesota does stink, and Wisconsin ran over them. They ran over them. They end up winning Paul Bunyan's axe. So the Big Ten West continues to be like very oddly curious in all the weird, wrong ways that we're not supposed to be curious about college football. It's the kind of thing that you browse on incognito mode because you're curious but don't want anyone to know it. That's the Big Ten West, and that's what we got in Week 13. What else do you got?
Yeah, well, things are also about to become scary as well as
also true.
You're going to start playing Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon a lot more than you're used to.
Correct.
What else do I have in my warm fuzzies? I've got a bunch of warm fuzzies. Kendall Milton absolutely abusing Georgia Tech and carrying Georgia across the finish line against a particularly frisky, feisty, which I think were 2 words you used in your online dating profile, Ty.
All the time. All the time.
Not current. I don't know if you've ever had one. Georgia Tech team who ran the ball really well, fought really hard, got quality stops against this Georgia offense, especially made plays against the Georgia passing attack. But Kendall Milton willing this team on the road in what could have been an upset spot, but I thought he was terrific.
Well, since you mentioned Georgia Tech, so that game was 31-23. Georgia beat Georgia Tech, clean old-fashioned hate game. Georgia Tech gained 363 yards, which was exactly as much as Mizzou a couple weeks ago. And Georgia Tech scored 23 points, which is actually the most anyone has scored against Georgia this season. Right now, they're a 6-win team, projected to go to the Pinstripe Bowl against Rutgers. If they play Rutgers, they will beat Rutgers.
I agree.
They will get to 7 wins. There is still a lot to improve for Brent Key. Okay, but one thing has been pretty consistent in his time as coach. They play for him. They play for him. Had his moments towards the end of last season, okay? But by and large, this is a team that has gotten better, continues to be feisty. Haynes King, I think, looked really good in this game. And they play hard. And if you play hard, especially late in the season, especially in the ACC, you're going to snipe some teams, man. You're just gonna. So I give Georgia Tech a lot of credit. I had them jotted down as one of my warm fuzzies as well, something that just made me feel good about watching college football because to play Georgia to a 31-23 game is, I think, an accomplishment in and of itself. But to do so in a way that didn't feel like it was smoke and mirrors was really cool.
I'll stay on the topic of SEC running backs with warm fuzzies because Cody Schrader has now rushed for like 1,500 yards and is the best running back in the SEC. And guess what? Another good running back in the SEC, Ray Davis, Kentucky, over Louisville, 5th straight time. Also Barian Brown, very good. A great performance from Kentucky, an up and down season, starts out promising, falls off a cliff. And against Louisville, a team in the top, 10, 12 right now, Kentucky comes clawing back up that mountain and comes away with the Governor's Cup. What do you call it, Governor?
The Governor's Cup. The Governor's Cup, yeah. So I included this in a section that I just kind of jotted down on my note sheet as Cups runneth over. Because there were some fun Cup games.
Right.
Kentucky won the Governor's Cup 38-31. It was a fun game that was in the shadow of Ohio State, Michigan, because they were both in the early block. But
yes.
Louisville gets out to a lead. Kentucky's defense steps up. J.J. Weaver, the linebacker, had a huge game. Ray, our guy Ray Davis, 127 total yards, 3 touchdowns, including the 37-yard game winner with about a minute left. That was one Cup game. Another was the Commonwealth Cup. Now, we liked Virginia Tech in this game. I think we looked at the point spread. We saw Anthony Calandria was playing for Virginia, and he's a bit of a gunslinger.
Sure.
Total wild card. And UVA has played well down the stretch. They haven't gotten a lot to show for it, but they've played better, and they're feisty. Virginia Tech won 55-17 over Virginia on the road. Tech not only got bowl eligible, they hung 55 points and 500 yards on their rival, and they had a ton of big plays. They scored, listen to this, on a 44-yard touchdown pass, a 33-yard run, a 32-yard run, an 84-yard pass, 94-yard kickoff return, a 34-yard pass, and then just a 7-yard run for good measure, ho-hum. So I thought a really good showing in a rivalry spot for Virginia Tech. Another team going to a bowl.
You see what Virginia Tech tried to take a team picture on the field after the game, and the Virginia groundskeepers turned on all the sprinklers? That's college football, baby.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
I love that. More warm fuzzies. I'll stay in the SEC here because both. Look, I mentioned Bo Nix. You mentioned Jayden Daniels, and they're Heisman dudes, and he was incredible against Texas A&M. Kind of a sluggish start, but was finding Malik Neighbors, was running the ball, goes over 100 yards on the ground, threw for like 10 yards per attempt, over 200 yards through the air. Was terrific. Found a terrific throw to Brian Thomas, and come away with a 12-point win over Texas A&M. Jalen Henderson, I thought actually was pretty good. I'm not going to put A&M in my scaries right now because I thought they played relatively hard given the circumstances with an interim coach, third-string quarterback. They just don't really have the secondary to do so, but not many people have the secondary to hang with Jayden Daniels. Continues to be incredible.
Can we talk about snow games?
Let's please.
Oh, the snow game.
Well, especially an unexpected snow shootout. Like, that doesn't happen all that often.
A snow game does not happen often, especially in Manhattan, Kansas. A snow shootout almost never happens.
Especially if Iowa State is one of the teams involved.
Especially if Iowa State's one of the teams. This was a crazy game. This game was full on nuts. Iowa State, I just talked through all the big plays that Virginia Tech had. Iowa State had touchdowns of, this is almost impossible. I don't even know how this is true. I looked it up 7 times, I swear to you. Listen to some of these stats. Iowa State scored on touchdowns of 71, 77, 79, 60, 33, and 82 yards to win Farmageddon.
Who did Abu Sama play for?
Abu Sama played for Iowa State.
That's why. That's why they had those plays. That's why they were able to score those points.
16 rushes for 276 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Absolute, dude. Yes.
So they only threw it 12 times. They only completed 8 passes, Iowa State, but 3 of them went for touchdowns. Meanwhile, K-State threw it 48 times in the snow. So this game, it sort of just defied conventional logic and ended up being fun. Iowa State wins 42-35 with the way that they started their season to close out the year 7-5. Bear in mind, 4 of their losses were against ranked opponents. I'm sure they would have liked to have done a little bit better in that capacity.
Yeah.
But it was a rocky go. You recall that weird exchange between Matt Campbell and like a reporter or like a heckler, whatever it was.
Still great. Lost to Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah. The way that they pulled together, I thought was really, really nice here. So good on them. The snow game's always fun. If I could keep it in the Big 12 for a second.
Please do. All you.
Want to give a shout out to both Texas and Oklahoma. Both teams played on Friday. Both were dominant. There were 126 points between the two of them. Texas won by 50 over Texas Tech. I described this game on our stream earlier as one of those deals, and you're a big brother. You're the oldest of 3. Maybe you've done this. One of those situations where the big brother just holds his arm out, keeps the little brother at bay, and the little brother is swinging his arms trying to connect and just can't do it.
Yep.
Just flailing. That was what happened in this game because Texas Tech, try as they might, never landed a punch. It was, again, a story of Texas and its defense being rock solid, never relenting, all the talk about the offense, right? All the talk about the offense and Quinn Ewers and the injury to Jonathan Brooks and the receivers they've got out, blah, blah, blah. It's the defense putting them in great position.
Yeah. It was more the like, quit hitting yourself with the every time they intercepted Baron Morton. Yeah.
It was. We got to see Arch Manning.
We did.
Which was a pleasant surprise. Texas is going to play for, I think, a potential playoff spot next Saturday.
Of course.
In their championship game against Oklahoma State. I believe they're about a 11.5, 12-point favorite in that matchup.
Sark got the monkey off his back. He got Jeff Banks's monkey off his back. The pole assassin's monkey off his back. Not being able to close the season out, not being able to close second halves out strong. Just a terrific step forward. Texas defense under Pete Kwiatkowski has gotten better year over year over year, especially that front. Just completely annihilated Texas Tech up front. A great season for the Longhorns.
Great season. And you know what? A great season for Oklahoma, too. A good season for Oklahoma. They won 69-45. At one point in the first half, I was doing some back-of-the-napkin math, contemplating what could happen if they could get to 100. Because it just felt like
they were getting no the momentum was there.
It really was. Dylan Gabriel looked incredible.
Yeah.
For Oklahoma in this game. Oklahoma's going to finish the year as a fringe top 10 or maybe a top 10 team, depending on how things shake out in bowl season by the time all is said and done. They finished 10-2 in year 2 for Brent Venables. Defense still has a ways to go, but took significant strides this season.
Yeah.
It did get better. And it's one of these stories that's going to probably live in the shadow of Texas being quote unquote back.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma to play as well as they did, by and large throughout the course of the year, I think is a really cool thing.
You want some more warm fuzzies? Real quick?
Give it to me. Yeah.
Arizona may still be scoring against ASU. How about this one? Tetairoa McMillan. Ty, did I nail it?
Tatiro.
Tatiro? I've watched a bunch of videos, Ty.
Tatiro.
All right, Tatiro. McMillan he might win the Blitnikoff next year. He goes for 266 against ASU. I looked up, ASU beat Arizona a couple of years ago with Kevin Sumlin. It was Herm Edwards, Kevin Sumlin, 70-7 with LSU's quarterback, Florida and Florida State's best receivers, depending on your view of Keon Coleman, one of Ohio State's better running backs, and for Arizona and Jed Fish, Noah Fafita at quarterback to absolutely dominate ASU has to feel terrific and feeling good down in the deserts. Hot fuzzies, Ty, not just warm fuzzies.
Hot fuzzies.
Down there in Tucson.
Do we have any dudes this week?
We do have dudes. You ready?
I'm ready.
Some players are good. Some are great. And some are just dudes. Welcome to Dude Alert, presented by Pristine Auction.
All right.
So we give out a bronze, silver, and gold goblet for 3 dudes that put up big numbers or did something cool otherwise in week 13. What do we got this week, Dan?
So I'm going to Tyro.
Thank
McMillan.
you. You got it.
Tyro McMillan's getting my bronze goblet of the week. I'm going Ashton Ginty, right? Did I get that one right, too?
You got
Boise State, incredible all-purpose effort on the ground through the air with a win Friday night over Air Force Abu Sama. So Abu Sama gets my gold, Ashton Ginty with my silver goblet. And then, of course, you mentioned Talia set records for Maryland in their win over Rutgers. Bo Nix, Berrien Brown was great. Big kick return for Kentucky. Kyron Drones lit up Virginia. Jalen Knoll for West Virginia. For Iowa State, Trey Benson, Florida State. Dylan Gabriel, you mentioned. Isaiah Bond with that crazy catch. Joe Milton lit up Vandy for whatever it's worth. Ollie Gordon was all of the points for Oklahoma State. And those are some dudes.
Yeah, those are dudes. We appreciate everybody sending in their suggestions. This, of course, presented by our friends over at Pristine Auction, the ultimate destination for sports memorabilia, signed sports memorabilia. You can get signed gear from dudes that played for your favorite teams. So just go to the website and type in Oregon Ducks or Notre Dame Fighting Irish or the Georgia Bulldogs or Ohio State Buckeyes or maybe even the Michigan Wolverines. Bids start at $1. Head on out to pristineauction.com. Use the code SOLID. You'll get $10 off your first win.
No brainer.
Absolutely. Dan, let's get to the Saturday scaries. You got the sound?
Let's do it.
The way it works here around the campfire, Dan Rubenstein, we get the fire started. Then we talk about the good. And like every good campfire, you need a moment to talk about the bad, to get it out, to have some catharsis.
Yeah.
College football is an emotional journey, is it not?
Of course, always, every week, every hour.
I want to talk about Oklahoma State, the football team, giving their fans a near heart attack. Okay?
Okay.
The Pokes were a 16.5-point favorite against BYU. BYU is playing a young quarterback. They feel good about their quarterback, but he's young. BYU, I think for the most part, has kind of checked out the back half of the schedule. All the Pokes needed was a win. All they needed was a win to get to the Big 12 title game against Texas. They did get the win, but they needed double overtime and 5 touchdowns from Ollie Gordon to get it. At one point, they were down 18 points to BYU. This game nearly gave me a heart attack. It gave me a heart attack. I can only imagine what it's like if you're an Oklahoma State fan watching this game. And it's already been, I think, a really successful campaign for the Pokes. There's just no way around it. They have exceeded expectations. They have cobbled this thing together again after their bye week. They beat Kansas State. It has been a different team from that point forward. But the fact that they were in this game, the fact that it was this close, that is definitely a bit discouraging. Again, they go into the game next weekend. I believe they're about an 11.5-point dog against Texas, but damn near scared the crap out of me, man.
I believe it. I'm not thinking great things about their chances against Texas, but I'm a little bit bummed we didn't get Oklahoma Texas Part 2 out of it.
Well, I
would have liked that just from a pure entertainment standpoint, but I hope Oklahoma State comes to play. You ready for some scaries of mine?
Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to list these off relatively quickly, Ty, because there's so much action to get to. Arkansas's effort, and I know, look, KJ Jefferson goes down almost immediately against Mizzou, but Arkansas had the defense this year to make plays, stay in games like they did against Florida, like they did against Alabama, like they did against LSU. Cody Schrader, electric, ran all over them. Embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing from Arkansas. You mentioned Florida and talking about the Florida State game, so I don't need to belabor that point. I'm just the entire Oregon State experience right now. So if you think about the last year, right? USC and UCLA leave. Oregon, that's 2 years ago. Oregon and Washington leave. They beat Oregon. They become a top 10-ish team. They lose on a slippery punt snap to Washington. I mean, more happened in that game. And then they get drilled by Oregon at Autzen, lose Jonathan Smith. It's just a nightmare of 18 months or whatever for Oregon State. ASU's day against Arizona, Stanford's day at home. Were they at?
Stanford was at home against
Stanford was at home. Yeah, it was Notre Dame because it was on Pac-12 network. Yeah, absolutely getting demolished on the ground by Notre Dame.
381 yards they gave up, yeah.
Yes. Colorado started the season off 3-0, finished 1-8 with an offense that fell apart without Shedeur Sanders. The offensive line was terrible all year. Utah beat them with a 4th-string quarterback and everybody injured, and Utah was still able to come away with a win. Also, my final one, Ty, the South Carolina experience against Clemson.
Oh, no.
South Carolina opens the game up with a scoop and score for Clemson. Then they immediately get the ball back, throw an interception, and then after they score their lone touchdown in I think it was a 16-7 loss, 8 straight punts, 5 of which went for 3 and out. The South Carolina offensive experience at home against Clemson.
The defensive experience wasn't horrible.
Totally good. Totally good.
It really wasn't bad. 16-7 was your final.
8
in the
straight
Palmetto Bowl.
punts. 8 straight punts, 5 of which were 3 and out.
I also have the absolute dagger that occurred in this Baylor-West Virginia game. Did you see the end of this?
I did not.
What Baylor fans have been through this season is cruel and unusual punishment. Baylor came back after a really bad first half and blanked West Virginia in the second half, for the most part, to grab a 31-27 lead with about a minute left. If you've watched any Baylor football, you know this season. We've talked about it on this show. Baylor's defense has been virtually non-existent.
Right.
Which has been problematic because Dave Aranda's supposed to be a defensive guru.
You would think.
They've been really bad this year. So what ends up happening? Inside a minute, West Virginia drives 84 yards. Garrett Green hits Jaheim White on a wheel for a 29-yard touchdown with 23 seconds left.
Okay.
He was completely uncovered. Completely uncovered. It was one of those deals where he throws the ball, the camera pans to the right, and you see it happening, and you gasp. I gasped. I yelped. The dog came down to check on me. What a moment. West Virginia ends up winning. They get their surprise 8th win of the season. They finish 8-4, so a really nice season for Neil Brown, despite starting the year on the hot seat. Baylor finishes up the year 3-9. I don't think they move on from Dave Aranda.
I don't know, because Baylor's a private school, yes? I don't know what their buyout number is, but it's probably huge after LSU interest.
I don't know exactly where things stand there. The read on the ground that I get from the Pope, the only Pope that matters, Peter Pope, is that Baylor fans are done. Baylor fans are done. They're ready to move on. They're willing to concede that the experiment with Aranda has not worked. I don't know.
The report was he needs to present a future plan to have him back. The expectation is he's going to present
like a
future plan.
The PowerPoint, like PDF. What's that? What is that?
All right, check page 3.
Yeah, there's going to be some.
Speaking of defense,
yeah,
another scary. North Carolina's defense is so back, baby.
Yeah, baby.
They are back. They gave up 39 points and 500 yards to NC State, which coming into this week was ranked 75th in the SP Plus in terms of best offense in the country. It's an 8-4 season for North Carolina. It's not entirely surprising given what we expected for them coming into the season. It is disappointing, though. It is disappointing. It felt like there was more there to be had. So North Carolina's defense bottoms out in this game. They had a chance to, win a 9th game. Didn't happen. Speaking of scary, I need to say mea culpa on NC State. I went on this show, our show, many moons ago, and I said North Carolina State is the 8th best team in the ACC.
Right.
North Carolina is now 9-3, and they're starting to use Kevin Concepcion in a really interesting way. Now, I have not seen the full game-by-game breakdown of how they are using him and in what positions, and I will do that in due time. He got 11 carries in this game and was very effective on the ground. He was also crazy effective as a receiver. He's been one of my favorite players all year. Whatever I think of NC State, KC Concepcion has been damn good. If they're going to start using him in a Deebo Samuel capacity, where they give it to him on the ground, they give it to him out wide, that is going to be a scary story for anyone who plays NC State in a bowl game.
Sure.
Okay. So mea culpa on NC State, 9-3, bravo. Bravo on a very
Man, you could just, if you were an NC State fan, 3 weeks into the year, beginning of October, just have somebody put you under for a couple months. Be like, man, this team is disappointing. Brennan Armstrong can't seem to figure it out. Just go under the best medicine, the best anesthesiologist you can find. And when you wake up, they're going to be 8-4 or 9-3. Somehow, some way, they'll lose by 55 to Slippery Rock or Robert Morris or something in September.
It's true.
And then they're just going to slowly climb, and they're going to end up in a respectable bowl with a chance to win 9 or 10 after. It's wild.
And my final bit here, I don't know if it's scary.
Okay.
It was definitely a bit shocking. Definitely woke me up
in
the middle of the afternoon after a long day of watching football. Did you catch Emmanuel Acho's yellow suit on Fox Sports?
Is it yellow? Is it mustard? Is it honey mustard? Is it brown mustard? What is the official shade? I know you're the wrong person to ask because you don't take in the color spectrum like most of us do.
My rods and cones are all screwed up.
Right.
It was a modern take on what Jim Carrey wore in The Mask. That yellow suit, he swapped out the mobster hat and the white shirt and black tie for just sort of like the cashmere yellow turtleneck underneath the yellow blazer. That was a very, very loud statement from Emmanuel Acho, who I otherwise really like.
Yeah.
And I have no reason not to like him. After this, it was a bold choice, and I support that.
Kind of like
shocking.
Like the color of a background couch in a 70s porn.
A little bit.
Right? Or like you're watching a documentary about mustard being made in 1977. There's the shade.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I don't know if he went full yellow, if it was just the top or if he, really sold it with the bottoms as well. But
I
either
assume
way,
so. He commits to the bit. Say what you will about his takes and how, there was something about javelin throwers not being able to smoke weed because we know what could happen. Remember that whole thing? We sort of swept that under the rug with like the Acho full bibliography of takes, but it was great.
The suit was something that I think is probably Verby worthy if we decide to do that.
It was great
at some point this year. I considered him for a dude alert, but that does it for my Saturday.
Your scaries?
Dan. Yeah.
I don't think I have it. I want to like create a new segment very quick. I don't know if it's like shouting from the mountaintops, tops.
Oh,
just shout out these teams who just got bowl eligible. Rice again?
Yeah.
Bowl eligible? USF, UCF, NIU, Northern Illinois, Syracuse, Old Dominion, Louisiana, Virginia Tech, Marshall, Eastern Michigan, shout out Chris Creighton, Utah State, Blake Anderson. All bowl eligible, all got to 6-6. It took the entirety of the season, but they did it. Also, next week's conference championship matchups, SMU and Tulane. SMU huge over Navy. Tulane with a nice win over UTSA in a huge American matchup. They get each other next week in the championship game. New Mexico State and Liberty because James Madison, that's Conference USA. James Madison not able to play in the Sun Belt, so that's Troy and App State. JMU bowl eligible, though. Miami of Ohio against Toledo in the MAC championship. So we got a bunch of quality matchups coming soon.
Very, very excited. Let's close things out with our roasts, shall we?
I would love to. Yeah.
We used to roast Stay Puft marshmallows by the fire at Camp Wakanda.
We got a great batch of reverbs here in week 13. Our guy Shay, Chief Reverb Engineer Shay, did a masterful job cutting these up. He's done so all season long. We're very appreciative for that, as we are all the verballers who called in to the Reverb line again at 855-Verbal-3. Here's what you all had to say. Have a listen.
Dan, Ty, I'm calling you from the field in Ann Arbor. That's how Michigan does it. Let's go. Crying Ryan. We won. We'll do it again next year. Doesn't matter. Wah, wah, wah. Go Blue.
Hi, this is Don from Laurel.
Hey guys, this is Will calling from Minnesota.
Hi, this is Garrett from DC calling, and this message is for Ryan Day. I heard you had a tough day out there, but I was busy watching about 2.5 hours worth of commercials, and there were some pretty good ones for this company called Indeed. They seem to do a really good job at helping people find new jobs. You might want to check it out.
It's not rational. It doesn't make sense given the record. But when you lose 3 times to Michigan, and especially with J.J. McCarthy's feathered hair, it makes you say, fire Ryan Day.
Ryan Day came into the big house looking scared and left looking broken. Go Blue, baby. 3 years in a row, and I couldn't be happier.
Everyone who thinks that Ryan Day's leaving is crazy. That's all I have to say.
Who wants to get into my time machine and go back to the 90s? Yeah! Let's go, Bucks! Good Lord. We're back.
I just witnessed Nick Saban escort the Auburn Tigers off the field. College football is alive. Is New Mexico State better than Alabama?
Yes.
I guess we'll never know. Thanks, Auburn.
I am just despondent right now. Oh, this is the worst. It was 4th and 31. Rush a linebacker, rush a cornerback, rush anybody. Oh, my God. Hugh Freeze, what are you doing? It's 4th and 31.
Look, I know UVA isn't very good, and I know Virginia Tech isn't very good. But hokey high, it still feels good whooping those Hoos. Go Hokies!
Remind me to never, ever, ever, ever get excited for Virginia Tech ever again.
It's nice of Penn State to wait till week 12 to break out the offense.
Pack it up, pack it in. Let it begin. The axe is going back to Madison. Go Badgers!
With the Boilers hoops about to be voted #1 in the country on Monday, honestly, I didn't really care too much about today's game against the Hoosiers, but it's still nice to have that old Oaken bucket stay in West Lafayette where it belongs.
Hey, I know you're not supposed to celebrate moral victories, but as a Georgia Tech fan tonight, we didn't get shut out, we didn't get blown out, And we covered the spread, baby. Heck, if you're in Atlanta, go Jackets.
Dan, I know that Oregon is one of the best 3 teams in the country, but right now, I'm like the little kid who wakes up on Christmas morning and sees the sleigh tracks and the deer prints in the snow. I believe the Huskies are going to find the magic.
A rivalry week haiku. Rivalry week, wow. Sadness and joy, rain, both same. Ha ha, you lost, bitch.
Hey, this is Benty, and as I look over the shattered remains of my betting slips from this weekend, I realize I forgot the one rule of Rivalry Week, and that's that you
gotta throw the records out.
Always throw those records
Throw
out,
them out.
Dan
Get those
Rubenstein.
records out.
Get them out of town. Great batch. Thank you to one and all for giving us a call.
You know what our reverb line is, especially at this point in the season, and it's especially appropriate. You know how there's like the turkey emergency line that Butterball puts up, right? You're like, oh, I don't know if my bird is going to burn at 350 degrees if I keep it in there this long. That's what kind of the reverb line is. Like, maybe somebody's best friend doesn't care about what happened with Arkansas. Maybe somebody's spouse doesn't care about what happened with Michigan State this year. But we have that line where you can call in and just let it all out. We're almost like escorts, right? We're not doing anything dirty, but we're here for you. If somebody in your life isn't providing what you need, we're here for you. We're adult college football escorts, and you can quote me.
Yeah, did not have that one on the bingo card.
No, it's okay.
A great batch of reverbs. Look, I mean, it is rivalry week. I've been reading posts on Discord. I've been reading posts just in our chat here. I've been reading posts all throughout the interwebs.
Yeah.
And it is an emotional week of football. It is always an emotional week. And I think whenever you have weirdness in the way that we had weirdness, and moreover, whenever you have a situation where you have so many teams still undefeated, you're going to have a wide range of opinions.
Yeah.
Everybody has a take on who the best teams are. And we could sit here and debate the merits of a 4-team playoff or a 12-team playoff or whatever, but college football at its core, and I know you agree with me, is about that debate.
Yes.
And that debate is going to rage on for the next week and probably the next day after, because we're going to find out in due time who's getting into the playoff. We're going to find out what it looks like when Oregon plays Washington again, what Florida State looks like with its backup quarterback against a team in Louisville, who otherwise I think would not have had much of a shot against Florida State. Texas and Oklahoma State, weirdness could ensue there. I mean, I could list all these games off. I won't. Alabama, Georgia is a monster matchup. So next week is going to give us some of the answers that I think we've been craving, and we really have not gotten because we haven't truly had that chaos moment. We had weirdness, but we have not had the chaos so far.
Yeah, my only real take, it's not a roast of anything. I don't know if there's a fully baked team. I'll stick with my Thanksgiving theme. I don't know that there is a flawless team, and maybe it's because we've been spoiled by whatever Alabama, LSU, the best of Georgia these past couple of years. Like, I don't know if we have a team that appears to be flawless. Like, Georgia's not separating from everybody. Jalen Milroe can't be counted on as a passer for 4 straight quarters. Like, Michigan has looked very strong against Ohio State today, but, like, I still don't know how much I trust them against teams that offer different kinds of threats, especially speed threats out wide. Alabama, I mentioned. Oregon, I still don't know about those high leverage moments, right? They have to get over Washington. They have to make those 4th down plays. They have to make those red zone plays. And they just haven't proven that they can do that yet. Texas on offense still, to me, is an open question. If Quinn Ewers specifically has to win a game going downfield, they did it against Alabama in September. Are they built to win in December, January? That's an open question at this moment. Obviously, Florida State has the Jordan Travis issue to get past right now. Washington, in the way that they've played down to opponents, that's fascinating to me. I don't think that any of these teams can beat any of these teams any given week, but I think it's closer than it's been lately.
Who is your top 4 before we let the fine people go? I mean, I think we put Georgia in there. I think by virtue of their win, you probably put Michigan in there, right?
Yeah.
Unless I'm mistaken. It does start to get a little bit more interesting, though, outside of that top 2, because you had an Ohio State team that lost close, but probably falls out of that top 5. You had a Florida State team that continues to win, but is definitely more flawed now, given the absence of Jordan Travis. You've got a Texas team that is up there, probably has a claim. You've got an Alabama team that is up there. You've also got Washington and Oregon not to be outdone, both of whom have had fantastic seasons.
Are you asking me to answer this question as a committee member, or are you saying if you had to rank the teams that you believe to be the best
Who do
in a
you believe
specific
to
order?
be the best?
In order, like most likely to win a national championship, I would have Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Alabama, Texas. I would have Alabama ahead of Texas now because I didn't love the way that Texas played down to a couple of opponents, but Alabama did too. So maybe I'll put Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Washington, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, Washington.
Interesting. Write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know where you stand.
Yeah.
Write in to all of our social media accounts. Let us know where you stand.
Yeah.
Please hit subscribe. Please hit follow on the podcast. Hang with us here over the next couple weeks. It's going to get weird. We're going to have playoffs. We're going to have conference championships. We're going to have coaching changes. We're going to have transfers. So a lot to come here as we round the corner into bowl season. We've also got a big game, our Winter Wonders Bowl pool, which we'll talk about at the end of next week. But this will be a very, very fun week and a half of college football. Excited to be here with you, Dan. Excited to be here with the Verballerhood, as we always are, talking it through. Any parting shots before we
No,
go?
subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, because we're going to have breaking coaching news. We have a Two's Crew show that we do. This is when we start to get into the Venn diagram of off-field and on-field. And so this is where you really got to stay close to the show, because we're ramping it up. We'll have emergency podcast episodes because there will be unexpected moves. There'll be crazy portal stuff. The recruiting, the first signing day is coming up before you know it. So this is when the rubber really meets the road in terms of college football content.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, and for the UCLA Bruins, currently losing by 23 at time of recording.
Hey, Cal's going to make a bowl.
Everybody out there, stay solid.
Peace.